Ooh, okay. So what we said, she was nursing him, and what I said, what a perfect opportunity it is for when you're holding him to be able to work with the hands and the fingers. And you said, yes, I love doing it where I take his fingers to my mouth. But you can also work where you're working, and if you want to come in and see real close, when you're really working each of his joints. So you're holding like this, and you're giving feedback of the whole finger, of the whole digit into the joint. Right? And then you can rotate. Then you can keep the finger still and just move the joint.
That might be hard for me to have two hands when I'm
nursing. But he's so small, you can do it with one.
With one hand.
Yes. Okay. So you can still go when you take, look, you see how I can go like that? And then I can go in moving like that. So you can move the finger and you can move the joint.
Now you want more? You just don't know what you want because you're tired.
You're a little fetch.
Maybe Tati should be with him on the table. He really likes... Tati's very playful with him. Okay. What if I do?
Hey.
But I'm not supposed to video from this angle, right? More from this angle?
Just so you don't see so much of the window.
Okay.
He's so tired. You're really so tired.
Maybe he'll fall asleep while you're working on him. Like that's gonna happen.
We were saying yesterday I was working on a little one with cerebral palsy, and he fell asleep mid-lesson, and I kept working with him, and by the time he got up, everything was moving so much easier.
Yeah. Sleep is really good after you work on them, right?
Very important, right? That's the time that the nervous system really takes that time to put it together. So he really moves one side of his pelvis very differently than the other. So it's kind of like his right side of his pelvis is that of a different person than the left side. Even the texture, the squishability of his organs here, very different. Yes, I know we have different organs on one side than the other.
Right.
But it's because he's so rotated. Here, hold on for 1 sec. Got him?
Yeah.
He's so rotated this way. Okay, so he's got this whole rotation thing going in the pelvis. Excuse me, he's so rotated this way. So this pelvis is more forward. And then sometimes he takes it and it's now, like, see, now it's all, it doesn't move the same, and we want to get there. And that's what is tying in with why the right knee doesn't bend up. When he goes to crawl.
Hi. Hi.
You like taking that toy?
Boy,
You want this? Yeah.
Can we go down?
Sit.
Yes, we come down. Let's see. Yeah. We got to head that way.
And by the way, he wasn't sitting by himself before the bump. But, I mean, for a few seconds he would, and then
You got to go over here, right?
since he has been actually doing it for a few more seconds.
So you see me talking today a lot about working in the joints. We have a lot of proprioceptors in all of those joints. The hip joints are bigger, so we have...
What's a proprioceptor?
Proprioceptors, it's like you have nerve receptors. They sense proprioception, so they can feel the movement within that joint. So it's like nerve fibers, and they connect, and they get stimulated, and then they transmit through that body. They go then up the spinal cord and go to the brain and go, oh, I can move. You know, now I know where my body is in space. Oh, I can move my leg like that. And all of a sudden, and and a learning and understanding of how to move oneself in space starts to happen. And we have that proprioception in all of our joints. We have it everywhere, but it's really strong in the joints. And because the hip joint is so big, we have more. And there's some therapies where they talk about GABA GABA receptors. It's like GABA is a chemical that goes up and it travels up from the joint and goes up to the spinal cord or then up to the brain. And then there's therapists where they are constantly working in the hips and pelvis. And to me, if you're not doing a movement that has to do with teaching them to understand where their body is in space and teaching them a functional movement, then it's not that it's a waste, it's that it can be done better. And I think in Feldenkrais, we're looking at it in terms of see that we've got bending. So here we're doing bending. We're not just keeping a leg straight to go in. Blah, 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 blah. You do want to blah, blah, blah. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah.
I'm more fascinated by you than the
Blah, blah, blah. The blah, blah, blah. The blah. Could you see the look on his face?
Notice how he's behaving much better with Abba than with Ima.
It's an Abba thing.
Mm-hmm.
We always behave.
There's less emotional factors involved.
First, there's no boobies.
Exactly.
You know, there's
There's no snack opportunities. You eat snacks with your daddy. So, just to kind of like understand what you're trying to do.
What I'm doing is he does this. Okay, it's developmental. He's not here yet. He's, at 2 years of age, they really sit up, or younger, obviously. They sit up like this. It's like we look at them and go, God, if I could sit on the floor like that. I mean, it's just like so easy. And then they reach over and they're playing with their toys. And so right now he's still back here because he's not ready for that. So even though while you have him in the sitting and we're dealing with him being a little tired, I'm not going to ask him to go into positions like on the belly if he's not ready there to start crying. But I'm working in those joints. So I'm working in the joint, right? And in working into the joint, into the hip. So think in terms of architecture. Dad's an architect. So think in terms of architecture, right? So you see the pelvis. There's this beautiful butterfly-shaped bony structure. It's our largest bony structure on our body. So if you're taking the leg and pushing through, you're going to take the whole pelvis, because it's going to move the joint. It's going to take that whole pelvis and move the pelvis. If it's moving the pelvis, the spine, the vertebral column, is now going to rotate. Right? So when it rotates, the rib cage gets moved. And when the rib cage gets moved, the head frees up. And when the head frees up, the eyes free up. When the eyes free up, then the arms can also go into reaching, and he can then more likely reach. I'm doing that because I'm trying to take him from the position that he's in, instead of saying, you know what, I really want to get him on his belly today. But he didn't have enough sleep, putting him there, maybe mom. So I'm getting him here until I can sneak him on his belly, is my intention. Okay. Does that make sense? So when you think of him, aside from thinking of Chanan as being your son, think of him also in terms of architecture, because it's the same like Moshe Feldenkrais would think in terms of physics and engineering. He was a physicist and an engineer. So he's looking at, if you move this, then that's going to move, then this is going to free up, and then more likely now the development can happen because you're out of your way. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. My husband does think of him in terms of architecture, actually. He says he's like a mini model compared to an adult.
Right.
He's about
He's a what?
He's like at a very large scale. I mean, an architectural model is usually like at a 16th or 36th. It's a little larger than that.
It's so much fun because our relatives in Israel can watch these movies on YouTube. Get their fill of them.
So he's too much on the left cheek. So let's get